Hey everybody, welcome back to the Lake Cities podcast with Chris and Lucas. Chris Respis is out working on his master's thesis, and our thoughts and prayers are with him and Charmaine as that is all wrapping up. So he will be joining us here in just a few weeks as he finishes that up. But in his stead is Colton Templin, who will be helping me co-host the show. What's up, Colton?
Hello.
Hello. Oh, so timid into the microphones today. With us today, Colton is the Chief of Police of the Corinth Police Department, the author of a baker's dozen books on how to properly police a community. It is the fabulous, the talented, and the very, 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 very. I'm just going to keep saying very
special.
The very, very special Chief Garner. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Well, thanks for joining us today. I know there's been a lot of people with a lot of questions about the way things are working in the Lake Cities now, that there is a study that's being done on the cooperative efforts between the Lake Dallas Police Department and the Corinth Police Department, with you as a single figurehead of leadership, and Sawyer, Greg, and Tyson kind of helping you navigate all of that. How has that been going, and what's that been like? I know that's a huge question, but sure. I think that's the one that everybody wants the answers to right now.
Well, to give just a little bit of background, this started as a result of the two city councils, Lake Dallas and Corinth, deciding, hey, this is something to try. Would it make sense to try and combine our resources to see if it would make a little bigger entity where you could have more people out there for officer safety, where you could have more opportunities for officers because it's a little bigger department. And let's do this as a study, they decided. They signed a written agreement to do a study to run 12 to 18 months. And the purpose of that study is to find out how well is it working.
Yeah.
Are the calls getting answered quicker? Is the customer service better? Is the customer service worse? Just how is it working? How are the officers working under that setup? And at any point during that 12 to 18 months, either city with 60 days notice to the other says, we just don't think this is working for us, and we'd like to go back to what we were doing before, to be totally separate departments. Mm-hmm. So that's certainly an option. At the end of that 12 to 18 month period, the two councils can decide, if they choose, we'd like to do an agreement making this a permanent arrangement. You'd have one chief for the two departments. You would actually be combining the two departments, at least as it early is foreseen, and it'd be an entirely different organization. In other words, one department isn't absorbing the other one or taking over the other one or anything like that. It'd be a new entity. You'd put Corinth PD and Lake Dallas PD together, to come up with something. Maybe it'd be Lake City's police department. Maybe it'd be Tri-City's police department. I don't know, but that would be the plan if it seems to everybody to be working out.
And so how far into this study are you guys? Did it start at the beginning of September? Is that correct?
1 month into it.
Okay. So
yes,
how's
sir.
the first month gone?
It's you would expect when you're putting two organizations together pretty quickly without lots and lots of lead time that you're going to run into some bumps and bruises as far as, and here's the example of, a Corinth officer on the scene is saying, this is the way we do it. And a Lake Dallas officer saying, no, this is the way we do it. And what we're finding out is, generally speaking, the frontline officers and the first-line supervisors are working those things out because we've just done things a little bit differently. Maybe it's a different piece of paper, a different form to fill out. But one of the things that helps is our policies and procedures are very, very similar.
Yeah.
We wrote ours with the intent of getting state recognition as a best practices agency, which we've gotten 3 times now. And Lake Dallas wrote theirs with the intent of getting to be a best practices agency one day. So they're pretty doggone similar already.
Well, that's good news. And I know that's been one of the big, apprehensions towards all of this is, what happens, who's actually in charge, what's what. But I think one of the things that's made this study I want to try to pick the right word here, so easy maybe in its infancy, is that these departments have a long history of working together. This isn't a new thing for Corinth and for Lake Dallas PD to work together. How has that cooperation in the past made this transition a little easier, or has it made it easier?
It's definitely made it easier because the people on the street know each other.
Yeah.
And particularly out here in the middle of the night, you need the people from that other organization, and you need the officers in some cases from Hickory Creek. It's a big caper of some kind. You need all your people involved. Or you just frankly run out of officers answering calls and you need help from someplace else. So having those officers answer calls, help out in the other jurisdictions has been going on for a long time. This just kind of formalizes it. It happens because at the time, Lake Dallas is without a police chief. So, okay, here's an opportunity to make one person in charge of the two departments, responsible for the two departments, and see if we can't bring them together more formally than just the informal relationship on the street.
From the few interactions that I've gotten to have with some of the officers over the last 30 days, they've absolutely loved the way that the transition into the study has happened. And one of the things that I continually hear has to do with the amount of bodies. I know it was talked about in the city council meeting where Lake Dallas actually voted on moving forward with the study, that they were not just a staffed minimum, but we're an understaffed department. And because of that, that takes a serious toll on not just the employees that you have, but especially on officers and your overnight folks who are called upon to work really, really long shifts. And now there's not enough people to swap back and forth. Has that been something that you've seen alleviated since the beginning of the study?
The people being able to work together and you have a bigger shift absolutely has helped, as far as getting someone a chance to get some days off where they maybe had trouble getting that before and were getting burned out. So let's say if, as in the past, maybe Lake Dallas had 2 officers staffing the street at night. Now we can add 5 officers from Corinth, and you have 7 cops out here. We have 3 beats or 3 districts in Corinth. There's 1 beat that makes up all of Lake Dallas. So you have, I won't say a lot more cops, but you have more cops out there to handle calls. And that gives you a little bit more of a break in between those calls. And if you have a major situation of some kind, maybe it's a major domestic violence, maybe it's which happens way too much, a major accident on 35. It happens every day virtually. You can put a lot more resources into that. And the idea is that it also helps customer service, because maybe if you've called in for something that's not an emergency, and let's say you're in Lake Dallas, and those officers are already tied up, you're going to have to wait until somebody can get clear to go. Now we've got folks in Corinth, if they're not tied up, they can come over and take that call. So that hopefully is improving customer service as well.
Yeah, so not only is it helping out the officers, but it's also improving response time for the citizens.
That's the purpose, and that's what we're going to have to be monitoring, the statistics, times on response in the future here to see how it works out. But everything says it should make those things better.
So there's kind of a little bit of a leeway between doing this study for 12 months or for 18 months. What's going to be the deciding factor, you think, in that? Is it just going to be whether or not the city councils believe they have enough information, or is it going to be something that has to do with leadership teams and that sort of thing?
I think you've nailed it when you said have enough information.
Yeah.
One of the things that's going to happen as part of this tentative study is the city of Corinth, with Lake Dallas's agreement, is going to hire a consultant to study how the 2 departments work. What is your call load? What's your workload? How busy are you? Do you need more cops? Do you need less cops? How is that working? And come at us with some figures that we can show to city council. It's not just like, let's say, the chief's opinion. Here's a study that actually shows you in black and white how many cops we've got, how many cops we need, how long it takes to a call, can we get there quicker, et cetera. So that's going to help them, I think, have the information. In addition to that, Corinth's city manager, Bob Hart, teaches at University of Texas at Arlington, and he has some capstone students that are working on projects of one kind or the other.
Right.
And we have 4 of them that we've assigned to look at where this has happened elsewhere in the United States. Where have you had departments go together? Even better if they're relatively our size. What's worked? What didn't work? What are the lessons learned? And they've got to get that information to us in December. So that will give us time to use whatever it is whatever they come up with. So we're having information, hopefully, that'll be coming from a couple of sources. And the third piece of information, of course, and I think both councils will pay a lot of attention to this, is what are we seeing as the results?
Yeah.
What are you hearing from citizens? What are you seeing yourself? Hopefully, what are you hearing from the chief? How's it working? And I think both councils are going to be alert to getting that information.
One of the big things that was brought up on both city councils, and we brought it up here as well a bit, is when we look at hard numbers, it's easy to see things like response time and things like that, but it's sometimes the intangible factors of burnout for the officers, mental health for the civil servants, and those kind of things. How does a study like this, where we're joining forces for this, how do we track those things, and are those things something that we can put a metric on?
I think we can, because when a consultant does a study, a management study, a management audit, a how are you doing look at a department, one of the things they do, the consultants, is interview the officers. What's working for you? What's not working for you? How are you mentally? How are you stressed? That's part of a study, is to see what the officers say. And this isn't such a huge organization. Even with two of us going together, it's still a pretty small organization.
Right.
It's doable to talk to everybody who's willing to talk to you about how's it going, what do you like, what don't you like. So that will definitely be a piece of it. Has this helped your emotional health? Has it helped you get days off? Do you like it? Do you like the people you're working with? Does it seem to be working for you? So that's a big piece, and you've nailed it very well. I'm assuming that's something a city council would want to know also. These are our employees. How's it working for them?
Yeah, that would seem to be one of the big overarching factors or things that we would want to look at, right? If you're doing and like you said, there's consultants who are involved, and they'll handle those parts of the study. But that's a big thing, even from people that are working in big box stores now. Mental health of the employees and employee satisfaction has become a larger and larger thing too. Small mom and pop businesses, and obviously it applies to city employment as well. What kind of feedback, if any, have you gotten from the community since the discussion started, and has it changed since the discussion started to now 30 days into the study?
Right. And this can be a good thing.
Right.
Because if people are unhappy, they're going to jump up and down and scream and call the chief and send the chief emails and et cetera.
Right.
I've not gotten anything. And
that's good news.
Nothing. And most of the time, and this is human nature, and I know you know this, if I'm mad, I'm gonna get in touch with you.
Yeah.
If things seem to be going okay, I'm going to let it alone. So I think it's a good sign that we haven't had any protests outside of City Hall or anything. So as far as we know, it seems to be going well in talking to the officers as far as working with people from the other department. As I say, they know each other. They like each other. So it's not been a problem as far as they're concerned. But really, it's early on after a month, not getting a lot of feedback at this point. And to me, that's, if people are unhappy, they're going to let you know.
Yeah, I think that was, so this is just being recorded a couple of days after the Facebook whistleblower came out. And one of the big things that she let out and that 60 Minutes discovered was that it was those angry posts, or the people that post that were upset about things, that really fed the algorithm. And not only have we not seen very many of those posts online, but it seems like they're getting squashed pretty quickly, which I think shows just that people aren't upset about this. Most people haven't noticed a change as far as the operations go and how it affects them. One of the things you've been really big on is community policing and how the departments interact with the citizens of the department. You've talked to us a lot already about customer service and the way that you're talking about the police department and the citizens working together. Yeah. How is that different than some of the policing styles that we've grown up around it, and why this shift into community policing? Right.
And I think both departments have always said, at least within distant memory, that we're into community-oriented policing. What we want to do is get out of the police car and go pet the kids on the head and drink lemonade with the kids, and get out and talk to people in businesses, or talk to them in their front yard when they're mowing the lawn on Saturday. Just be seen in something other than a enforcement capacity. But a couple of things. COVID came along, and it's knocked a lot of that on the head.
Yeah.
As far as having us pull back some of the things like Citizen Police Academy, Coffee with a Cop, things like that. That's hurt us in that respect. But also, when you're short on people, you don't have time to get out of the car and talk to people and go meet the kids or what have you. You're going call to call. So having more people out there should support community-oriented policing better. That's the general idea. And with COVID, hopefully fading soon, that's what we're hoping for, that'll allow us to get those programs like Coffee with a Cop and Citizen Police Academy, those kind of things going all over again.
How has this past year changed the way that you have to do police work because of COVID?
Well, masks don't make it any easier for people to see that you're smiling and not frowning at them. You have to smile with your eyes these days.
Yeah.
It's, I think, nationally, probably worldwide, because we have to have the support of the community, and they have to be able to see that, hey, we're good guys, not bad guys. When you're masked up and we're having to keep people at arm's length in some cases, it's not helped community relations for any police agency anywhere. It's hurtful. And what we're needing to do is get back to doing more of that. And that's what most of our cops want to do. That's what they enjoy doing. That's kind of why they went into this job. But the COVID thing has hurt all of that.
How is it now that schools have completely reopened? The Lake Dallas Independent School District is not doing distance learning anymore. You guys have a pretty significant presence at the sporting events, especially the high school football games. Y'all were honored at one here recently where the departments were honored. Mm-hmm. How has that shift over the last several months as schools open back up? You guys are getting to participate in those things. What's that done for the morale of the department?
I think it's been helpful for both Corinth and Lake Dallas because, as I say, cops like that positive interaction, particularly with kids.
Yeah.
And that's let us get back into doing some more of that we had to put kind of on a hold for a while. The old, keep your distance thing.
Right.
So it's nice, and from what I've heard is all positive from the cops in being able to get back to doing more of that. Not 100% yet, but get back to doing more of that. That's good for our morale. It's hopefully good for the kids' morale too.
Yeah. I have really enjoyed the interactions that I got to see at the, I think it was the senior game that we went to for seniors night, was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And just seeing the officers there honored on the field, the interactions that they had with the students. One of the things I hadn't seen in forever is going to a high school football game and then seeing an officer, help somebody get to the section of the area that they wanted to go by just walking with them to that area.
Yes.
Not only is that, like we talked about before, great customer service to walk with somebody to the section they want to go to, but more than that, it's this feel that we're allowed to be a community.
Right.
Again, has been quite a lot of fun and enjoyable to see. I want to shift gears a little bit. One of the things we didn't really talk about last time you were on is that you are a very accomplished author in this area, especially of policing. You've written, I think the last time we talked when we were off air, you said that was your 13th book.
Yes,
that was about policing. When you look at what's happening in Lake Dallas and Corinth, with the experience that you have, not just as an officer and a chief, but also as an author, where do you see this fitting into the future of policing? What we're doing here, does this say something about the future of policing?
I think it has to say something about the future of policing because it's expensive to run a police department.
Right.
It's a high risk to run a police department. There's big liability issues. And most of the police departments in the United States, close to 90% of them, are 25 officers or less. And many, many police agencies are 3 officers or 5 officers. We have a lot of police agencies in Denton County, just our county.
Right.
And many of them are very, very small departments. And they're expensive to run, and they basically duplicate other services. How many departments do you want to have run a jail? How many do you want to have run animal control? How many do you want to have run a communications, a dispatch center?
Right.
It just makes sense to save taxpayer money by putting some of these organizations together. I think we're going to see more of that in the future because policing is getting more expensive all the time. The equipment's getting more expensive. Salaries, fortunately, are going up. It's expensive to run a police agency. And if you don't have to run your own, if you can either contract with a bigger agency nearby or if you can go together with some agencies, that just makes sense. As a taxpayer, that makes sense to me. The issue you always have to deal with, and I absolutely understand that one too, is local control.
Yeah.
I want to control my cops. I may only have 3 of them or 5 of them, but I want to be in control. For example, in many places, the sheriff's office will provide, in any state, not just Texas, police service for a number of communities. But you'll hear from some of the citizens in those communities, well, yeah, they're nice guys, but I want my own cops. Don't want a deputy here. I want my own cops. That's not the universal feeling, of course.
Right.
But in many communities, I want my own cops. So you have to kind of get past that if you're going to put agencies together, even though it makes sense financially, even though you're more effective, you're more efficient, that local control thing is always there. And I absolutely understand that.
So in the books that you've written, have they been more based on policies and procedures and best practices, or is it more about practical policing, or is it a combination?
It's a combination. What I've mainly written on is officer safety, how to survive on the street, how to do your job without getting hurt. The other areas I've written on are police press relations. How do you relate to the news media?
Ooh.
And that's more difficult today probably than ever.
No doubt.
And I know police chiefs that won't mind going into a dark building looking for a bad guy, but a 19-year-old with a notepad and a camera comes along, and the chief wants nothing to do with that. And in our business today, you have to be able to work with the media. You have to. So I've had a chance to teach and read some, work some on that. And then the other area is just on police supervision and leadership. What does it take to supervise law enforcement officers? We're an interesting bunch of cats.
Yeah.
And it's not just like supervising necessarily some other line of work. Police officers have their own unique characteristics and personalities, and so do police chiefs.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's been fun to write about. I could never make a living at it, but it's fun to get somebody buying your books, which somebody somewhere is doing. I don't know why, but they are.
That's that's got to be a good feeling. The 1st of September has come and gone now, and in the state of Texas, the 1st of September is always a very significant date because that's when the laws change.
Yes.
And I remember a couple of years ago, the big law that got passed was that we could carry knives over 6 inches. So a person could walk around with a sword.
Yeah.
And I remember Governor Abbott's quote was that the reason they did that is because Texas should be as free as everyone believes it is. One of the new laws that got passed was regarding open carry and concealed carry for private citizens. How has that, or first off, can you explain that law? Because one of the things that we're seeing a lot of is a lot of misinformation being spread
Sure.
about what that law actually is, how it
Sure.
actually changes things or doesn't change things. So if you could give us kind of a brief synopsis of that, and then how has that law being passed, how has it changed the way that you and your officers have to police certain situations?
Sure. And a very short Cliff Notes version of it. If you want to wear a weapon on your side, a firearm, a handgun, and you're an adult, you can do that. And you don't have to pass a test on the law. You don't have to pass a shooting test. You don't have to prove that you have a need to carry that weapon for some reason, that you're afraid of bad guys. It just opens up for people to carry a weapon unless they're in one of those categories that's forbidden from carrying a weapon. It might be somebody who's on parole, somebody who's been arrested, charged with domestic violence. Mm-hmm. It just eases people to be able to carry a weapon without having to go through a lot of hoops. To answer your second question, we haven't run into any issues with it at all.
Well, that's awesome.
I think the folks that were opposing it were seeing scenarios where there's going to be shootouts in parking lots at Walmart, and somebody's going to get mad at their neighbor and start shooting at them, or well, they get mad at their neighbors and shoot at them now without having carrying an open weapon. We haven't seen the issues, and I see folks that are openly carrying and they're not doing anything stupid, so it's not a problem for us. Obviously, if you're out and drunk and acting crazy and you've got a weapon, we're going to get involved. But that was the case before the law got passed. So it's basically kind of a common sense approach to carrying a weapon, if that's what you choose to do.
Does that apply only to open carry, or does it also apply to concealed carry? Because this is one of the things I've seen a lot of discussions on.
Right. It covers the concealed carry as well. So it's not and we're not going around looking for, peeping under people's coats or anything like that to see who's carrying.
You're not going to lift up Colton's hoodie to make sure he's not carrying a weapon.
He may be carrying too. But
I have my license, though. I took my test.
At any rate, and the advice that I give to people as far as carrying a weapon, if you're not doing something stupid, the police aren't even going to contact you. You're not going to have any trouble unless you're doing something dumb. You go into the bar, get drunk, start shooting holes in the ceiling, you'd get in trouble before the change in the law.
Yeah.
So if you're just using common sense, the cops aren't even going to be interested in you. Now, what we do encourage people to do, if you're packing, if you're open carrying, or concealed carrying for that matter, and the police officer stops you for a traffic violation, it's just smart to let him know, hey, I'm carrying a weapon. I want you to know that, and here's where it is. And the officer may say, okay, thank you very much. But that way the officer doesn't get surprised, and then everybody's level of nervousness goes up as soon as he spots that weapon if he didn't know about it. So we just recommend, hey, let him know that you're carrying. You're not going to be in trouble because you're carrying unless you're in one of these categories where you're not supposed to be carrying. So we're trying to apply common sense to it, and I think if everybody else does, we'll be in good shape. But really, we've not had in our jurisdiction a single issue come up with it that I know of, and that's good.
So what you're saying is just because the new law passed, it doesn't mean that Doc Holliday and Rango have now just like camped out outside of every Walmart in the city. That's good to hear.
No, there were some pretty loud voices on both sides of the issue that were maybe kind of imagining bad scenarios that so far aren't happening. It's when you have that kind of emotional argument, sometimes things get jacked up a little bit. That it's the end of the world, Armageddon is here, and that just hasn't been the case.
So the question I have about it is, when I took my test, there was a lot of stuff I didn't even think about. Like if you do have to pull your weapon, let's say you're in a mall and there's an active shooter, then you need to have somebody call the police and say, hey, I have my license. I'm taking down the guy who's the active shooter, just so they don't come after you as well.
Exactly.
Is there anything that the police is doing to inform people that haven't gone through the course that are now carrying for laws such as that, or to protect themselves?
A lot of stuff has gotten put out on various agencies' social media, like Facebook pages of here's what we expect of you. And in a situation like that, again, I know that maybe sounds corny, but we just expect people to use common sense. Please let somebody know that you're intervening and that you're going to be involved. And if the cops show up, they're not going to know for sure who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. And if they're giving you instructions, for goodness sake, follow the instructions, even if that means the bad guy now gets away. We don't know for sure when we're showing up who's good guy, who's bad guy. So you don't want to have an incident because somebody got mistaken for a bad guy. And of course, that's happened in the past. So we're saying, follow the instructions the officers give you. We'll sort it out. We appreciate your helping us catch the bad guy, but just do what the officers tell you so nothing bad happens to anyone.
I like it. Well, man, we really appreciate the time. I've got one last question for you before we let you go. Over the last, let's say, when did you start policing in 1969? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So over the last 40, we'll call it 40. It's 50 years. So
51 to
51,
be
50 over the last 51 years. What do you think was the most bizarre or humorous situation you found yourself in, either as an officer or as chief?
Oh, that
you're allowed to share.
That's that's a hard one. But a couple of incidents, just come to mind, and they both happened on a Halloween. And coming up on that, was going to an accident in a major intersection there in Colorado, in the city, and got to the accident, and it was a Volkswagen that was upside down, and there was a bumblebee in the trying to kick his way out of the car, and you'd have to be there and see. He wasn't hurt. You'd have to be there and see it to appreciate the bumblebee trying to kick his way through the windshield and not having any success at all. And also on a Halloween night, stopping a car or checking a parked car in a dark park, and you can already see where this is going. But there were two people who were not dressed, but painted up as American Indians with all the painting, all the stuff to indicate they were both Indians, and they were not wearing any other clothes, and they were happily enjoying each other in the park. And I just, that wasn't unusual to see that, but to see them marked up as Indians was kind of, it was kind of entertaining.
It's a different type of trick or treat.
And
so it is.
Well said. And really being kind of surprised at all this and not knowing what else to say. It was a dumb comment. I just said, take that out in the county. You're in the city right now. Which was kind of stupid, I guess. But
get out of my jurisdiction.
Pretty much.
Oh, well,
Both of these were in Colorado. I'm
Both of
guessing.
them were Colorado.
Yeah, yeah,
and I'm
good.
sure there's a bunch more, but that just kind of comes off the top right
Yeah.
now of the images you can't get out of your head.
Yeah, I
No
would
doubt.
imagine.
The bumblebee and the Native Americans. But
Well, Chief Garner, we appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on the show. Let our guests know if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
probably the best way is via email.
Okay.
That's what everybody wants to do today.
Yeah.
And it's Jerry, Jerry, Garner, Garner, at cityofcorinth.com.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Lake Cities podcast. And Chief, thanks for coming on again.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Take care.
Chris and Lucas want to thank you for listening to the Lake Cities Podcast, a service provided by FBC Lake Dallas and Antioch Christian Fellowship. If you have a topic you would like for Chris and Lucas to discuss, email them at thelakecitiespodcast@gmail.com. Make sure you give us a review and click on the subscribe button to get the latest episodes each week.